Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. We're going to get things kicked off right here. And we're going to do a webinar on engaging and hiring your top university talent, and with our very special guest star, Kayla. There is a chat function on the right-hand side of your screen. If you all want to use that as a way to ask questions, if you want engagement on anything else, if you want clarification, please feel free to enter in your information to that chat bar. And then at the end of this webinar, we'll be sure to address all those questions. And if we run out of time, we'll make sure to follow up with answers to all of those questions as well. Perfect. Well, thank you all for joining. I'm going to start off with an introduction on who's going to be speaking on this webinar, and then we'll kick off the content. And just a reminder, ask all your questions, and we'll be sure to address them. So there's two folks who are going to be conducting this webinar. Myself, my name is Pallavi. I work on the customer success team here at Handshake, working with all of our partners to make sure that they are successful in getting the most out of our platform. And then I'd like to hand over the stage to Kayla. Kayla's from SAS. She runs their university recruitment team and is really going to be doing the meat of this presentation to talk about how SAS has enabled their hiring and their virtual strategy. So Kayla, take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Pallavi, and thank you so much for the opportunity, everyone on the line, to hear a little bit more about our SAS on Campus Leader Program today. My name is Kayla Woitkowski, and I'm the Senior Manager of University Outreach and Recruitment at SAS. I've had the incredible opportunity of leading a team of 7 passionate individuals who are really on a mission for hiring the next generation of talent for our organization, but more importantly, really focused on aligning students with their passions. I've been at SAS for 4.5 years now, and I came over initially to really focus on overhauling our intern program, and then was given the incredible opportunity to really build the university recruiting team really from the ground up, starting in the US and now really looking across the globe, and really began this journey, we'll call it, in 2015. Prior to being at SAS, I was at another fairly large tech company, also doing university recruiting. So really, since graduating college, university recruiting is really, it's all I know. I've been in the UR space for a little over 8 years now, which is crazy to think about. But I'm a very active member of the National Association for Colleges and Employers, as many of you on the call may be as well, so NACE, where I'll actually begin a 2-year board stint here this upcoming summer. Personally, I'm a Cleveland, Ohio native, and I came to North Carolina for college at NC State, where I studied business administration, human resources, and also minored in French. So I am absolutely thrilled to have the opportunity to speak with you all today, and thank you so much again to Handshake for offering up the opportunity. So let's go over what we'll talk about today. Really the goal of today is to share some insight on a new program that SAS launched in fall of 2019 that we call our SAS On-Campus Student Leader Program. And what we'll cover is we'll begin with an overview of SAS and really our university recruiting function, just to set some context and some groundwork. Then I'll kind of go over really what the business problem was that we were trying to solve by establishing this program here in our organization. Then we'll get into some of the nitty-gritty of the program itself and talk to you a little bit about what SAS on-campus student leaders looks like for us here at SAS. And more importantly, we'll talk about some of the key results that we've had, both through the recruitment process for filling the positions, which is really where Handshake comes in, and then we'll also talk about some of the key results we've seen from the program itself after our very first semester last semester. And last but not least, we'll look forward. We'll talk a little bit about what SAS is thinking in regards to the program and its future. And obviously want to leave some time, as Pallavi alluded to, we do want to give you some time to ask some of your questions. And if there's anything that I can help to answer, happy to cover that as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So we'll get started by talking about our early talent recruiting here at SAS. Before we get into that, though, it's probably important to cover who is SAS. Many of you on the phone may not know who we are. Our organization is considered to be the market leader in data analytics. In fact, 96 of the Fortune 100 organizations use SAS in some way. So in short, we're helping organizations of all sizes really take data and transform it into insights so they can either make better decisions or create efficiencies in their business processes. So just a few high-level examples. DSW Shoes uses SAS to help optimize inventory and know exactly how much of what shoe to be in what size and what location. Major sports teams use SAS, like the Orlando Magic, to help with player performance, also look at things like optimizing ticket sales. And many of the world's largest banks actually use SAS as well to really look at uncovering suspicious activity or fraudulent activity on a bank account, and then send the notification to customers to protect their account. Some of you maybe have gotten one of those texts or emails before. That's actually, in many cases, SAS software kind of powering that process that's happening in the background. So we're a 14,000 person organization. We're truly a global organization as well, with operations in 59 countries across the world. And we are headquartered in Cary, North Carolina, which is just outside of Raleigh, in an area that you all may have heard as being called the Research Triangle Park, so really the RTP area. A fun fact about SAS is that we were founded on North Carolina State University's campus. Actually, one of our founders and also our president and current CEO of the organization, Dr. Jim Goodnight, he was actually a professor at the time, and NC State had some research to do around agricultural data, and at that point, since analytics didn't even exist, our founder actually created a statistical analysis system, so SAS, to help really be the founder in analytics. So being founded on a university campus, the idea of student outreach, the idea of having internships, it's really a part of our DNA and really has been something that we've been doing since the very beginning. And I'll end by saying that we here at SAS have a world-renowned workplace culture, and we're very, very blessed to have been on the Great Place to Work list since the inception of that list. And what really makes this unique about SAS and really drives some of our reason for having university recruiting is that we have a very low turnover percentage. Usually it's about a third of what you'll see in the technology industry. So a lot of our employees have been here for quite some time, and we do have a lot of employees that are eligible for retirement or have recently retired. So what that means is we have a demographic shift, and while most organizations are seeing this retirement of the baby boomers happening within their organizations, at SAS it's really exacerbated because we are, 40-year plus technology company, and since that we have that low turnover, we have many employees that are really vacating roles, which really is increasing the need for us to make sure that we have that great strong bench of talent to take us forward, and also ensuring that we're inserting that innovative talent coming from the university space, which has really led to our early talent recruiting at SAS. So in general, our university recruiting team, again, established in 2015 and is made up currently of 7 team members. We have 3 U.S. recruiters, and we have a recruiter in Asia as well. We have an intern program manager, we have a specialist and a coordinator, and we also have an intern that we like to call our intern of the interns, since they do so much related to our intern program. For this academic year, we're projecting about 448 university recruiting hires globally, split almost 50-50, about 55% of those hires being interns and 45% being early career hires. We've seen a 50% increase in the amount of positions that we're tasked to fill as a team since 2015. So kind of goes back to what we were sharing around kind of that focus and need for university recruiting here in our organization. Our early talent recruiting programs really do include all functions. It's pretty fascinating here. We hire interns into landscaping that help keep our grounds. We hire interns. We've hired artist interns before that help create our artwork here on campus. So we really do touch every major, but our focus is primarily on the areas where we know we're going to have headcount growth, so we can really build that strong pipeline of talent for our organization, which really leads us into the majority of our hiring being in computer science, quantitative degrees like analytics, statistics, economics, as well as business. When it comes to our outreach plan, currently we have 24 colleges and universities that are quote unquote part of our formal outreach efforts that we do. We have 8 Tier 1 universities, which we consider to be our kind of all-in full engagement universities, where we do career fairs, information sessions, where we're proactively hosting events to really build our brand there on those campuses. We have 6 Tier 2 schools, which we consider more virtual relationships, where we'll send alumni. Sometimes a couple of these are local universities, so we will go on campus to some of these universities. But the idea being that it's more limited and more virtual engagement. And then we have 10 universities that are part of the program that we're going to spend the rest of our time talking about today, which is SAS on campus. So let's talk a little bit about why. Why did SAS choose to start this program? So recently at SAS, we have had a chief operating officer really take over the helm of much of our operations. And he established a 3-year corporate plan, and we're now in year 2 of that plan. One of the 3 main pillars of the corporate plan is to secure our future, which is really focusing on engaging the next generation of SAS users. So when we're thinking about this pillar, there's really 2 very important business problems that SAS needs to solve. First, and honestly most critically for our organization, we need to increase the amount of students who are aware and using SAS in the classroom. Many statistics and analytics programs are now using other analytical tools, especially with the advent of open source technology. And so it's critical for our future that we find ways to engage students to really be not only SAS users, but SAS advocates. Secondly, as you saw through our current outreach strategy, our UR team really only has capacity to travel to about 8 universities nationwide. So we needed to find a way to help scale our outreach. And knowing that there's, 4,500 degree granting institutions across the United States, and I firmly believe that there's incredible students at every one of those universities, we needed to think differently about how we can engage different students at universities a little bit more at scale. So in order to address these problems, the university recruiting team actually partnered with another organization within SAS, within our education department. It's really our academic programs team. They are really responsible for inserting SAS into the curriculum at universities. So really helping to establish and build our presence in the classroom for SAS as a product. So this is really a cross-functional project. This is really, hitting 2 major points. So this program doesn't even sit in the university recruiting department. It actually does sit within our global academic programs team. So just an interesting fact there that, sometimes programs that can help with recruitment actually can help solve other business problems too. So let's talk a little bit about what this program is. So SAS on Campus Student Leaders. Really, the overall concept is we're really trying to grow our employer and product brands to nationwide universities. And when we're thinking about what our key goals are of wanting to establish these relationships, it's really a 2-prong approach. Again, really leaning into, we have our academic program outcomes, and then we have our university recruiting outcomes. So for academic programs, they're really wanting to increase professor awareness and usage in the classroom. SAS actually has several programs across the United States that teach our analytics in a master's level program or a joint certificate program. So trying to increase more usage of SAS in the classroom. But also, academic programs has a lot of interest of making sure students are aware and using SAS. We actually do have free versions of our software that students can download in order to gain analytical skills. So really one of the goal outcomes is let's get more students using this free software and downloading this software. And then really from a branding standpoint, just increasing overall awareness and engagement with our technology. Do students know who we are? Are they choosing to use us as an analytical software over some of our competitors? So for university recruiting, we really want to drive that strong, diverse pipeline to our academy and intern programs. Our academy programs are our early career direct from college training programs that we put our new hires through. And then, as mentioned, we really want to scale out. We want to expand to have our on-campus presence to be at more than just 8 universities. I'll say that with us being a data analytics company, the very first question we get with anything like this is how are we going to measure this? So we have quite a few ways that we are measuring these multi-pronged outcomes. We are looking at student applications when it comes to university recruiting and obviously looking at hires. For academic programs, we're looking at things like how many professors are downloading our free professor tools and resources on our website, how many students are actually obtaining a license to our free software. And then with our new software that just came out, we are able to even track the usage, how much analytics are being derived from that software. So going back and looking to see if some of these efforts are driving the goal outcomes that we're hoping and expecting. So the details. We chose this to be a pilot with 10 universities to begin. We hired 2 students per university and really strove to have at least one student be more business focused, one student be more technical focused. I'll say in some cases we did end up hiring 2 more technical students, and if they had strong business acumen, presentation skills, we still kind of made that exception. The idea here is that when we go to a university campus, we want to be able to really get into both the technical programs as well as the business programs, but then also knowing that for some technical students that may be really strong at being able to show other students how to use our software, it may not be their strength to get up in front of a classroom and speak about SAS software and feel confident and comfortable doing that. So that's why we really chose that partner approach on university campuses, and we've seen great success by allowing them to work in pairs. And then we hired these interns as paid part-time year-round interns. So they do get paid an hourly rate as part of their benefits for being in the program. So what are leaders working on? They're helping to develop creative ways for expanding our SAS product and employment brands. They're attending events, they're informing students about SAS's market position, our internships, our need for SAS talent for our customers, and the analytics industry in general. They're generating research, so we do have them, on their campuses looking at what programs are teaching SAS currently, what professors are advocates for our software, because without it being in the trenches on that university campus, we may not even know about a certain professor that may be passionate about our software and teaching it. So helping to uncover some of that research on that university campus for us. And then, of course, developing strong leads for our intern and academy program. And you gotta love the bullet point on a job description that's other duties as assigned. And really, they've helped us post jobs. They've helped post flyers on campus. They've had lunch with prospective students that have strong backgrounds. They've been extremely active on social media, posting on LinkedIn and other resources. So that's an example of some of the other responsibilities as assigned that they've taken over. So the target universities, again, being an analytics company, really every decision that we make has to be driven by data. So what we did to decide which universities we target, we first looked at a set of data from a tool that we had a license to look at who and which universities were creating talent that did not have SAS on their resume. So really looking at SAS presence being minimal. We also took a look at what universities we already had master's programs or joint certificate programs. And we kind of avoided those universities, really focusing on what you would call in sales a greenfield opportunity where we could really build from the ground up. We had specific feedback from our executives that the West Coast presence was really needing to be beefed up. So we did focus as well on making sure we had some significant presence on the West Coast. And then really focusing on programs that had strong analytics, statistics, and computer science programs. And again, using that same body of research, we were looking at what universities are creating a lot of talent in Python and R, but maybe not so much in SAS. So that could lead us to understand that this university has a desire to be in analytics, but they don't quite know yet what SAS has to offer. And then, of course, from the recruitment standpoint, we did look at universities that have strong programs from which we hire. So we looked at computer science programs, sales programs, management information systems, business IT, and the like. So we landed on 10 universities. I'll say initially our list was 25, and then we did decide to call it down, again, kind of keeping in mind that this year is really being coined as our pilot year for the program. So we received approval for the program in May. So although it says Spring 2018 advertised, you'll notice that that box is not highlighted in yellow because this was our pie in the sky plan that we were striving towards. And by the time we got approvals for this program, we did not have the spring timeframe to engage students. So we really started collecting applications right around the 4th of July holiday and through mid-August, and then began the screening process. Conducted final interviews in late August and had all of our reps identified by August 31st. We did host a training here in our corporate headquarters where we flew the students in for a 2-day training and really gave them all the skills and knowledge and abilities that we thought were going to be necessary for them to go back to campus on day one and be a representative of our organization. And the students began the program on September 10th. I'll say when I presented this timeline to my university recruiting team and saying this is something that we were going to do, they looked at me like I had 12 heads and said, Kayla, you are out of your mind. There's no way. Because 2 things. One, this involved recruiting in the off-peak cycle in the time that students aren't even on campus. So our traditional methodology of going out on campus, maybe speaking to them in career fairs or talking about this program in an info session, that opportunity was long gone since we didn't get approval for the program until late. And then second, we really only had about 6 weeks to fill the positions, about 2 months if you include the application period. And for those of you on the call that may be in the university recruiting function, you know that that is a pretty tight turnaround. So we spent many hours in conference rooms brainstorming, and we did end up launching some pretty interesting outreach strategies, which we'll talk about here in a minute. So how did we advertise? Well, first and foremost, I do want to talk to you a little bit about Handshake and really the power of the tool and how it came into play in this recruitment effort. We did post to our general SAS.com. We did some interesting social media advertising. We did partner with a well-known social media company where, more photo-based, and we spent just under $3,000. We didn't get any hires from this effort, but we did end up having over 230,000 unique views, and it drove about 7 applications. So not an incredible return, but it was interesting to see how many people at least got to interact with us through that social media campaign. We partnered with our wonderful individuals in HR communications to really push that out, which was, again, something interesting knowing that we were recruiting at an off hour, but we didn't necessarily see the return that we were hoping from in that. We did some targeted outreach on some other social media tools. We also did, ping some student organizations and some professors to try to get some generation of applicants there. And then we did look to our current interns and some employee referrals. The challenging thing is we did select universities from which we didn't have a presence. So many of our current interns didn't attend the universities that we ended up targeting. So unfortunately, we weren't able to get much return from our referrals as well because we didn't have a presence yet on these campuses. So let's talk a little bit about some of the results of our outreach efforts. So it ended up turning out that Handshake was actually our top source for student applications. We ended up having 248 applicants to the program, and 62 of them quoted Handshake / their university job board as being their source of hearing about the opportunity. So that was about 25% of our applicant pool. And then we look at who was actually hired for the program. And we had about 25% confirm Handshake as being the source that they heard about us of those that hired. And then 29% quoted student outreach. So by student outreach, a large majority of our outreach that we did was actually through the Handshake tool. At that point, we were a premium partner, so we were able to send direct messages to students, and we had a really strong open and hit rate on those messages. So while we don't know for certain that those 29% specifically were Handshake driven, since we did other forms of outreach, we can make an inference that a large majority of those may have come from that specific outreach that was taking place through the Handshake tool. So really, I truly feel that without the Handshake tool, that we would not have had the outcome that we did of being able to fill these positions in the quick turnaround time and with the talent that we did. We had strong talent. And really, it helps us solve the problem that we're hiring in a short amount of time and the slow season of recruitment when we weren't able to engage directly with maybe our typical career services counterparts. It helps us recruit at universities where SAS had a little on-campus presence. Again, since we didn't have established relationships at these universities, we didn't necessarily have our list of contacts or our list of professors or student organizations that we typically have to be able to reach out to directly. So Handshake really allowed us to have a presence in some of these universities. And it's really allowing us to up our virtual engagement. We talked a little bit in the beginning of the presentation about SAS's strong workplace culture, and we do have a hard time being able to articulate that in a lot of cases remotely. And now we do have a premium profile on Handshake where we can articulate through video and strong content around who SAS is, what we do, and a little bit more about our value proposition. So I again, truly do feel that because of the Handshake tool, we were able to see success through our recruitment for this specific effort. So let's talk a little bit about the results of the first semester of the on-campus leader pilot. So for fall 2018, our first year of doing this program, the student leaders hosted 26 different events on their various university campuses. They conducted 162 virtual campaigns, whether this be outreaching to student organizations, outreaching to at a few universities. They even got distribution lists for dorms where they were able to share to an entire dorm who SAS is and what we do. So anything that was considered a virtual outreach campaign, we had them document, and 162 of those. If you think about the amount of reach that could be on our university campuses, it's pretty incredible. This led to us receiving 951 applications to our intern and academy programs just from these 10 schools, which was a 164% increase in the amount of applications from those schools specifically. All but one of the 10 universities over doubled their applications, and we had almost a 10-time increase, 9.8-time increase from a top Ivy League school from which we have never stepped foot on from a university recruiting standpoint. At this specific university last year, we had 11 applications, so very minimal presence. So this year we had 108 applications from that specific school, which for us really shows two things. One, it shows that students are aware of who SAS is now, and two, it shows that not only are they aware, but they're as interested as applying, which shows that they're considering SAS. So they're not only aware of SAS, but they're considering us as an employer of choice that they want to apply to for employment, which is for us just an incredible success metric. So looking forward, what is our plan for SAS on campus? So this academic semester, spring 2019, we're really focusing on expanding the SAS skills within the student body. Since the fall is the primary recruitment cycle time period, a lot of their time and efforts were really focused on goal one of being, SAS as an employer. And now they're really focusing on SAS as a product and SAS as a skill. So they're hosting workshops, they're having SAS employees come in and do classes and trainings. And then this upcoming April 2019, the entire SAS on campus kind of program team is performing a detailed assessment of the program, really measuring increases in awareness, consideration, and conversion of student talent. So really understanding that, it takes time for employer brands and employers in general to move in this continuum of awareness, consideration, and conversion. But the idea being that in order for a student to convert, and in our eyes that might become a full-time employee, or convert meaning that they're now a full SAS user, they first have to consider SAS. So they first have to apply, or they first have to get their hands on the tool. But in order to consider SAS, they first have to be at least minimally aware. So the idea here is this is kind of a building block, and it's going to take some time. So this upcoming year, we have some great metrics of success related to awareness and consideration. And the question is going to be, how can we get to conversion over time, since that's the ultimate goal of this program? And beyond, we had an initial executive review of the program at the end of the first semester, and the executives were quite pleased with the results as of today. So there were already some initial discussions around, well, it's a missed opportunity that, this upcoming summer here at SAS will have about 185 summer interns, and, they go to local universities or universities that maybe aren't part of that list of 10. So that's a missed opportunity. Maybe we need to expand and allow some of those interns to become on-campus student leaders, since they've already felt our culture and they've already been a part of our program. So we're talking about potential expansion in that way here in the U.S., and there has been discussions around potential global expansion as well. Currently, we're in the process of globalizing our university recruiting programs, and this could be a phenomenal way for us to, at scale, make an impact on some of those university campuses across the world. How will SAS continue to use Handshake as part of our core recruiting strategy? I'm very excited going into next academic year. We're already starting to plan for the 2019-2020 academic year, which again is crazy to say out loud. I think we were recruiting in 2012 when I first started, 2011, 2012. So it's crazy to hear 2020 in the list of the academic year. But really this upcoming year, we are looking at reinventing our outreach strategy with a focus on some virtual engagement and proactive recruiting. And now this doesn't mean we're going to take away all on-campus presence from a university recruiting standpoint. There's still so much value and so much benefit of being face-to-face and shaking the hand of a student. But I personally feel inside that there is excellent talent at every university across the United States. And what I've been challenging the team to think about is how can we make sure that every student across the United States knows who SAS is and sees us as an employer of choice. And I do think tools like Handshake do allow us to do that. I love Handshake's mission. I think it's to democratize student opportunity. And I do feel that there are top performers even at the smallest of small colleges in, a small state to the large Ivy League schools. So it's about how do we uncover those students and make sure that they know about us as well. And I think Handshake allows us to do that. And some of that would be digital campaigning and outreach to some of these students for our open roles. We already have a session scheduled with Pallavi here coming up in our slow season where she's going to come and make sure the team's all trained on how we campaign and outreach to students. So really leveraging our customer success rep to make sure that we're trained effectively on the tool for our fall recruitment season, which again will allow us to reach more colleges and universities, but I'll emphasize with a more efficient job posting process. I'm not sure if anybody else on the phone remembers days before Handshake, but the amount of time it would take to log into every university job board and post your job 6 times to every university platform. Oh, it was such an administrative burden. So the fact that Handshake has really solved that problem for organizations is such an incredible win, and we'll certainly be leveraging that tool in that way moving forward. And then last, we've received a lot of rich data through Handshake, and I believe this is because we're a premium partner, but we do receive Handshake analytics. And what it allows us to do is see our number of applications as well as our profile views per university, and we've been able to even cut the data semester over semester so we can track and see, have we seen an increase in applications from fall to spring at specific universities, and have we seen an increase in our views to our profile? So really, again, measuring that awareness of SAS as an organization. So really want to continue to look at all the ways that we can use Handshake as a way of assessing ROI for our activities of what we're doing on university campuses. So key takeaways, really 3 main points from this discussion is 1, that proactive student outreach is essential, especially when recruiting outside of the regular recruiting seasons. Really with having a program approved May 1st and not having our traditional methods of contacting students, it's really important to be able to think outside of the box and think about ways that you can attract and get in front of students in different and unique ways. 2, data is necessary for assessing ROI of programs. And how are you using Handshake analytics? Are you tracking your number of applications that come in semester over semester? Are you seeing how your events are performing and which career fairs maybe make sense for you to go to and maybe don't? There's a lot of good information within the Handshake tool, so you can really make sure you're getting return on your investment of all of your outreach strategy. And then 3, in general, campus ambassador programs can really help be a creative and cost-effective way to scale outreach efforts, really help address multiple corporate goals. A question that I anticipate maybe on some of your minds is the piece around cost-effective. And, we talked about some things like a training program and having them fly out to our headquarters, and I'm sure a lot of you are seeing dollar signs in your minds. Well, the way that I looked at it is overall for the program cost for 1 academic year, it costs less than 1 mid-tier resource on our team if you include benefits. So really for the cost of 1 formal headcount, we've been able to help penetrate universities across the United States at 10 different university campuses that we may not have been able to have a presence. And then two, I would, challenge the thinking around addressing multiple corporate goals. I think with outreach to universities, a lot of times it's easy to think about how do you build talent for your own organization. But in our case, it's just as important that we're building the talent for our customers as it is that we're building talent for our own organizations. Because if students don't know SAS coming out of college, then our very valued SAS clients and customers don't have the talent that they need to be able to use our software in the future. So how can you expand your thinking horizontally on some of these programs so that it provides more than just a recruitment benefit to your organization? So with that, that covers the content that I was going to cover today. So I will pass it back over to Pallavi, and she can open up the floor for Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, Kayla. Lovely presentation, very informative. We've gotten a few questions on the chat, so I wanted to just address some of them today. Starting with, can you elaborate a little bit more on how you chose the students that you wanted to target with your student outreach? How did you come up with the right population, the right segment of students to really reach out to?
Great. Yeah, so I'm hearing that as being more of the recruitment. How did we, I'm kind of seeing maybe two different ways to address this. One is, how did we decide that we wanted students in a business program, and then more technical and analytical? So the first piece of that is, we wanted some of those business students because we do quite a bit of hiring in sales, but then also too because we found that these students typically can be well networked, also typically have a pretty large network on a university campus, and we were looking for individuals that were outgoing enough to the point that they were willing to, just go out there and be an advocate of our brands, and, had that confidence to be able to be up in front of a room of their peers and, speak off the cuff about our culture. So a lot of that was important when choosing and selecting more of that business profile we talked about. So we made sure on every university campus we had at least one student that kind of hit that mark, that they were kind of that engaging student, that one that we knew was well connected, well networked. Then when we look at the other student, we want to make sure that they had technical capacity enough to be able to use our software. So our software is an analytical statistical program. So a lot of times if it's being taught in the classroom, it's by statistics students, that's who's learning it, analytics students or economics students. So we really did look at that area and tried to find students that have either used SAS before or have used similar products, or even a computer science student that's maybe programmed in Python or Java or one of those other programming languages, so that they would be able to pick up the skills necessary in case if we needed to do a technical demo or something of that nature. So those were really the two main components, and I'll say we definitely hit the mark. A few students at several of our universities, I can think of one in particular who she's on the panel, I can't say the word, but she's on the board for sororities on her university campus. She is extremely involved and engaged. She has a network across the entire university campus, and that has really helped get a lot of people kind of in the know. And then the person we paired her up with was a computer science student, a little bit more reserved, but very, very technical in nature, really strong programming skills. So in those instances that maybe a computer science student comes to an info session and really wants to know more about the back end of our technology, this computer science student was able to speak to that. So that answers kind of the first part. And if the second part was more about the actual how, our interview process, we had initial screens with our university recruiters where we did screen them for more of those skills that I just addressed. And then we had a final round virtual interview that we conducted with a virtual screening technology where we more so interviewed them based on SAS values of being passionate, authentic, curious, and accountable. So that was more of our interview process for selection.
Awesome, fantastic. And so kind of building off of that, you talked about having groups of different students of different backgrounds. From a virtual standpoint, when you're reaching out to those students, how many of the Handshake messages that you sent to those students were personalized to those students? So were you sending out just a cookie cutter copy and paste, or were you making it targeted towards their specific background to really find the right opportunity for all of them?
The nice thing about the Handshake Premium tool is you can cut into the data of the students at the university. So we weren't mass blasting, all 14,000 students at a university. We did dig into specific programs specifically, and we did have to look at students that were either sophomores or juniors because we didn't want individuals that were maybe graduating and had that the senioritis that sometimes can make them maybe not as engaged on their university campus. So that was obviously a calling factor for us as well. But our outreach, it certainly wasn't personalized one-on-one. We did do a little bit more of mass blasting, but we did, call it down to an amount of students that we knew really kind of fit our initial criteria of what we were seeking.
Fantastic. And then on one of your slides, you talked about how there was a 9x increase in interest. How do you define that that increase? Like, what are you using as your benchmark to say there was a 9x increase?
Great question. So for those specific metrics, the 9.8x for the specific Ivy League school, we were looking specifically at applications into our applicant tracking system. So we're very fortunate to have an applicant tracking system with really rich reporting capabilities. So actually what I did throughout the entire semester for the student leaders was I pulled the year-over-year statistics as well as the, believe it or not, I did week-over-week statistics for these students. And it actually turned into a pretty fun competition because what we actually did was each Friday I'd report out, we had a Facebook group for engagement, and I'd say, okay, great job, insert school name, you've increased now by 20% from the first week, or great job, rival university, you've now surpassed your rival university. So we had a lot of fun and interactive engagements by really tracking those applications as being that source of quote-unquote awareness. In my mind, if they've applied to us, they know who we are, and they also know who we are to the point that they want to apply. So I figured that was a good kind of measurement, and one that we could really look at rich data from the year prior as well, and look at year-over-year growth too.
Definitely. So we got a few different questions around your Tier 1 and Tier 2 school strategy. So can you talk a little bit about how you rank your Tier 1 schools and your Tier 2 schools, and what's the criteria to really build those two groups?
Yeah, this is a great question too. And I think I mentioned previously, we're actually in the process of kicking off a project to potentially revamp this strategy for the 2019-2020 academic year. So, definitely take this information with a grain of salt because it can change. But the way that right now we tier our universities is, one, I first look at the recruiters on my team and look at capacity. And I truly feel that a university recruiter shouldn't have any more than 2 to 3 target schools if they're also carrying recs. And my team does carry anywhere from 60 to 80 recs in an academic year, so they're filling quite a few positions. So that kind of gave me that 8 numbers, that 2 to 3 at 3 recruiters. So, 2 of the recruiters have 3 target ones and another one has 2. So that's how we landed at 8. So then how did we decide what are the 8 universities? We looked at a lot of criteria. We do work with another vendor to pull some really rich data on universities, and we look at things like size of the university. We look at diversity demographics. We also look at what's been very fascinating through this data is we look at home state. So, for us, we're located here in Raleigh, North Carolina. We want to find, universities where the students are primarily either from the Southeast or have interest in traveling to the Southeast for full-time employment. There's been some universities I've recruited from in past experience from, the Northeast and some other schools in general where the students primarily want to go out to the Silicon Valley. So we wanted to make sure that the universities we targeted, we had the opportunity to win at those schools. And by win, I mean that if we were going to spend the time, the money, the effort to be on those campuses, that these students would actually want to come work at SAS. And a lot of that has to do with, their ability and interest of landing somewhere else in the future. So that was a big piece. We did look specifically at the programs from which we recruit. So a lot of our Tier 1 targets do have strong professional selling programs. We do have a fairly large entry-level recruiting program into sales. So we were really interested in those programs where the students were coming out saying, hey, I want to do sales, instead of, sometimes if they just generally study business, they want to, do sales to get their foot in the door, but it's not what they're looking to do for a career. So we did look at sales programs, we looked at computer science programs, we looked at management information systems programs. We looked at a couple other things too. We wanted to avoid programs where we have a lot of SAS in the curriculum because we're building those programs to derive talent and develop talent for our customers. So if we went in and stole all that talent, that would really be counterproductive to another one of the key goals within our organization. So those are just a few of the criteria points to begin, but there really were a set, I would say, of probably 10 to 12 criteria points that we assessed a long list of universities on to then come up with those 8 universities. Lastly, I'll say a couple of our universities are in Texas because we got a request from executives to grow our presence in Austin, Texas. And since the Texas area, they didn't really know who we were, we did select a few universities in the Texas area too.
Fantastic. And then when you're looking at your application, so you mentioned that there was a big skyrocketed approach to the number of applications that you've got over the course of the last year. There's some curiosity around the quality of the candidates. So were you getting the same quality of candidates from your Tier 1 schools and your Tier 2 and your virtual schools? You could just talk about that.
I'm so glad that you asked, and it's an interesting piece and something that we were definitely measuring. So what we did this year, we did something a little bit new in our process, and quite honestly, I'm not sure that's something that we'll do moving forward, but we did have a set of pre-screening questions to help us filter our pool. One of our largest challenges here at SAS is pure volume. You know, typically we get 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 applications to our summer intern program, and you know, with the team of 7, it was becoming very daunting to review every single one of those resumes. So in these pre-screening questions, we asked the questions that we typically subjectively reviewed a resume on. You know, are you involved in a student organization? Are you a leader in that student organization? What's your GPA? There were quite a few more questions. And what we did was we weighted our candidate pool based on their responses to then surface to the top based on those responses who we thought were going to be some of our top applicants. If they passed that initial screen, they moved to the next step of our process. And we did take a look at SAS on campus applications to see how many of those students moved on to the next step of the process. And we did find, I don't have the metric right in front of me, but I believe it was about 25% of that candidate pool moved forward to that next round of review, which for us in general was about the mark of what we saw standard on our Tier 1 campuses too. So all of that to say, we did see this quality to be very high. I don't have the specific hiring numbers just yet because we're still in the process of wrapping up our recruitment for this year, so I haven't done the full assessment of how many we've hired from each school, but there are quite a few hires that we've made as well from these target schools as well for SAS on campus. So certainly I found that the quality was high, and I'll say from the resumes that the SAS on campus leaders, if they were really passionate about somebody, maybe spend a lot of time courting them, I would actually have them send the resume directly to me so I could disseminate it to my team so it didn't get lost in the shuffle. And I would always open up those resumes, and they were strong. They were very, very strong students, and students that I'm not sure we would have uncovered without having these students out there and engaging these students. It's something about that peer-to-peer interaction, I think, and knowing that we hired such strong student leaders that typically strong talent, you know, interacts and hangs out with other strong talent. So we did find a lot of those students were really strong that came through.
Fantastic. Another question on, can you just quickly review for the group on how you found your student ambassadors? There's been a few questions about that. So high level, you know, your top three things to find those student ambassadors.
So how we found them. So our sourcing strategy, how we identified those students?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so our number one source was Handshake and job posting, at least for applications. So Handshake was big. 2 was, they quoted kind of recruiter outreach. So that was either, you know, we did, you know, get student organization email addresses, we did get professor email addresses, we did get career services contacts, and we did reach out to those individuals to kind of send the job description and send the message. So that was one of the strong sources that we found as well. And then 3, we had quite a few people that just applied directly. You know, we do have our job board for SAS.com that then gets web scraped, so it can be found on, you know, Indeed and some of those other job boards as well. And we had a few applications that came through from that too. So those were, if I'm remembering right, our top 3 sources of talent. So pretty traditional outside of the, need to use Handshake and be creative around that engagement strategy.
Well, that's what we like to hear. And then, are there any specific on-campus events that you feel really made SAS stand out?
On-campus events that really make us stand out. I think this is kind of the gold ticket that every employer is trying to solve. I mean, we definitely do try to be creative with our outreach strategy. I think what makes us stand out the most is our opportunity to bring students to our headquarters here in North Carolina. So we, as much as possible, tried to do things here when we can. So really, we have 22 buildings. Our campus is about 900 acres. We have a healthcare center. We have multiple, cafeterias and a gym, and it's incredible here. So when we can bring students here, that really does help us sell. And actually, so much to the point that 2 years ago, we actually launched a virtual reality app. You can download it on your phone, actually, in the iStore or in the Apple Store, as well as Android. It's called the SAS Experience, and the SAS Experience is a virtual reality tour of our headquarters, because we found that if we couldn't bring students here, we needed to bring our campus to them. And as soon as they watched the SAS Experience, it was pretty incredible how their eyes lit up and said, wow, I want to come work for you all. So we did do a tour to VR when that launched, and went to universities here locally and actually non-locally as well, and brought our virtual reality and showed that campus tour. So that was pretty unique. But also we've done things like we've gone into courtyards here at universities locally, and we have fitness instructors that work here as part of our Recreation and Fitness Center, and one of them taught yoga in the Brickyard at North Carolina State University. So we hosted students from across the campus to bring their yoga mats and led a yoga session, and then of course had our SAS pop-up banners all around. So when people were walking by getting their lunch, they were like, what is going on? Why is everybody doing yoga? And then there was a big, SAS sign. So we do try to be creative in the ways that we engage students and try to think outside of the box, but we're certainly doing a lot of the traditional things too. We're definitely doing career fairs, tech talks, info sessions, engaging with student organizations and sponsoring student organizations as well. Oh, another fun one was at Baylor University. We try to find what is unique about the university. So at that university specifically, tacos are really big. So we had a session called Let's Taco About SAS, and we bought tacos for all the students, and we talked about SAS. So we do try to get a little bit creative in how we approach students at each university.
Love it. There was a question around, you hit an aggressive hiring goal in a really short span, given that timeline that you were presenting. What would you consider the main driver of your team's success to hit that goal in such a small amount of time?
First and foremost, I have an amazing team, and I don't think any of them are on the phone, so I'm not just saying that to appease them, but really, I did assign one of our more senior recruiters to be a project manager of the timeline, and she really drove a deadline-driven process where everybody needed to have the resumes reviewed by a certain date. They had to conduct all of the phone calls by a certain date. She scheduled a review session after all of the phone calls to make sure that everybody got on the same page and talked about the candidates, so we had quick turnaround times. And lastly, we really engaged people from all across the company to do those final interviews, and we really got some really great people involved that were committed, and we put that date on the calendar in advance, and had that be a quote-unquote interview day, where we had all of the SAS on campus interviews happen all in a 2-day time frame, so it was a little bit exhausting, but we knocked out all of our final round interviews in the course of 2 days by kind of pre-planning and getting that scheduled in advance. So I think it was really clear project and program management that really helped with some of that, and again, just having a team that was really committed to getting the job done, and for that I'm so grateful.
Fantastic. And then I know we're wrapping up on time, so we'll just end this with one final question around, did you end up hiring any of your student ambassadors as full-time employees for SAS?
Great question. So we are in our first semester, and as mentioned, we didn't hire any graduating seniors, but we do have a couple of the interns that are going to be joining us this summer as actual summer interns, and one of them specifically aligns very nicely with one of our early career programs, our SAS Academy. So I can anticipate, knock on wood, that hopefully this will be a person that we hire full-time. But since we are in that first semester, we don't have any of those kind of long-term results yet. But that is absolutely a goal of this too, is selfishly, if any of these SAS on-campus leaders perform exceptionally well, we certainly want to hire them ourselves. But one thing that we didn't do is we didn't necessarily hire these students, with the only intention of them aligning with our full-time programs, because we really wanted to just make sure the student fit the role and the need for this program specifically. So, some of these students are studying things that we typically don't hire for in large scale. Like I think one of our students is a human resources student, and our early career opportunities in human resources are a little bit few and far between, but she was just so well networked. She was actually the student I was speaking about that's very well networked on her university campus. So, I'm not sure that she's somebody that we will be able to hire full-time, but of course in those instances where it makes sense and it aligns, that would be an exceptional outcome, as well as for some of these leaders to become employees of the organization.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kayla, for all of your insight, the deep dive into your recruiting strategy and the on-campus program. Thank you to everyone on the phone. We really hope this was informative and helpful. If we didn't get to your questions, we will follow up, and we would love to let you know that Handshake does have a series of webinars. So in the chat, we're going to put the link to our next webinar. It's Powering the Next Generation of College Recruiting. Feel free to click on that link, register, and attend our upcoming webinar.
Thank you, Pallavi. Thank you, everybody, for joining.